January 15, 1919. The quiet streets of Boston's North End erupted as a towering wave of molasses, over 25 feet high, crashed down, swallowing horses, men, and entire rows of brick buildings, leaving 21 lives lost and a city forever changed. In the early 20th century, Boston was a bustling hub of industry, its waterfront a maze of warehouses, factories, and the massive, steel-clad structure of the United States Industrial Alcohol Company. The company stored a staggering 2.3 million gallons of molasses in a cavernous, 50-foot-high, 15-foot-wide tank built in 1915. Molasses, the thick, sugary byproduct of Caribbean sugar refining, was a vital ingredient for producing industrial alcohol, a commodity in high demand during World War I. The tank, erected on the South End's busy commercial street, was meant to be a symbol of progress, but its foundations were rushed, its steel plates thin, and its safety measures, by modern standards, woefully inadequate. For years, the tank leaked a slow, sweet-smelling seepage that dripped onto the streets, prompting neighbors to complain. Engineers warned that the structure's design was flawed. The tank's walls were not properly reinforced, and the foundation was built on reclaimed land with a layer of fill that could shift under weight. Yet, driven by profit and wartime urgency, the company dismissed the warnings, opting instead for a costly but superficial fix, a coating of a special sealant that never fully cured. On that fateful winter night, temperatures plummeted to a bitter cold 2 degrees C, 35 degrees F. The molasses inside the tank contracted, creating a vacuum that pulled in air through a small vent. When the vent finally gave way, a sudden influx of warm air rushed into the tank, causing the dense syrup to expand with a force that no one could have anticipated. At approximately 12:30 a.m., the steel walls buckled, the tank split along a seam, and an unfathomable 2.3 million gallons of molasses surged out in a catastrophic wave that raced through the streets at an estimated 35 mph. The molasses, a viscous river of brown sugar, slammed into brick storefronts, smashed through iron gates, and tore down the stone facade of the nearby Boston Elevated Railway. It flooded the narrow alleys, trapping residents in their homes. The weight of the liquid, equivalent to a small ocean, crushed roofs, snapped streetlights, and buried people under layers of sticky, heavy syrup. Horses, the primary mode of transport, were flung from their harnesses, their bodies snapped like twigs. In the chaos, 21 people perished, many from asphyxiation as the thick syrup filled their lungs, while dozens more suffered severe injuries. Broken bones, crushed limbs, and deep lacerations from twisted metal and broken glass. Rescue crews arrived hours later, their boots sinking into a sludge that clung to every surface. The molasses, now cooled and solidifying, turned the streets into a treacherous battlefield. Workers used shovels, fire hoses, and even saws to cut through the hardened mass. It took 3 days to clear the main thoroughfares, and weeks before the last remnants were scrubbed from the city's stonework. The smell of burnt sugar lingered for months, a haunting reminder of the disaster. In the aftermath, the city's legal system faced a massive case that would become a landmark in corporate liability. The United States Industrial Alcohol Company, its executives, and the tank's architect, Edward M. Miller, were thrust into the courtroom. The defense argued that the disaster was an act of God, a natural occurrence beyond human control. The prosecution, however, presented testimony from engineers who had warned of the tank's structural weaknesses, as well as documents showing that the company had knowingly ignored safety recommendations to cut costs. The trial, which began in 1921, captivated the nation. Families of the victims testified, describing how their loved ones were trapped, suffocated, and pulled under by a tide of molasses. One poignant moment came when a surviving victim, his voice hoarse, recounted how he felt the sweet smell of death as the syrup filled his mouth. The jury, moved by the harrowing accounts and the undeniable evidence of negligence, returned a verdict that held the company financially responsible. In 1923, the United States Industrial Alcohol Company was ordered to pay $628,000 in damages, equivalent to over $10 million today, a sum that forced the firm into bankruptcy. Parallel to the legal battle, medical examiners performed autopsies that revealed the horrific nature of the injuries. The most common cause of death was asphyxiation. The viscous molasses entered the victim's airways, creating a blockage that could not be cleared by conventional means. In several cases, the syrup had infiltrated the lungs, leading to pulmonary edema and severe chemical irritation. For those whose bodies were crushed, the autopsies documented compound fractures, crushed ribs, and lacerated organs. The medical reports also noted that the high sugar content of the molasses created a conducive environment for bacterial growth, leading to severe infections in survivors who suffered open wounds. These findings spurred changes in industrial safety protocols, emphasizing the need for thorough structural assessments and emergency response plans for large volume storage tanks. The Great Molasses Flood left an indelible scar on Boston's landscape and psyche. In the years that followed, the city enacted stricter building codes, mandating regular inspections and reinforcing the foundations of all large storage facilities. The disaster also prompted the American Society of Civil Engineers to develop new standards for tank design, including requirements for adequate wall thickness, proper anchoring, and redundant safety valves. Subscribe to the Autopsy Files for more stories like this.